Come on to the After Dark Podcast. The podcast in which Sheriff Anthony does his best to wrangle Konrad through Westworld, one doggone episode at a time. So kick back and grab yourself some Apple Jack, or some Adam's Ale if that's your preferred poison, and get ready for these two wannabe cowboys to ramble the night away. Music was provided by the fantastic Nancy Wyatt and Jared Iscariot. Enjoy the show! Hello, welcome to the After Dark Podcast. My name's Anthony James, and that's Konrad. How are you, Konrad?
You threw another word in.
I haven't done that for a while. Actually.
It's an unprofessional start. Let the record show that I was ready. I came in here to work. I came in with my business pants on, and Anthony has pulled the rug out from under me there. Hello, I'm here.
He's here. Good to see you, Konrad, as always. We're here to talk about a bit of Westworld. This is the prime to the pump, you might say, the penultimate episode of Westworld for the season. Before we get into the actual recap, Konrad, give me a 30-second explanation, or even a one word if you want. What do you feel ready for this finale? Are you pumped up for it? It's the go-home show. Are you pumped?
I don't know if I am, really. Like, I feel like we're kind of just meandering towards it rather than sort of I don't feel like they've maintained pace very well in this season. I'm still, I'm looking forward to it because it's a good show, and I'm sure that there'll be some great moments and some great cliffhangers in the final episode. But honestly, the pacing hasn't been great. I'm kind of just like treating each episode as it comes rather than feeling like we're building towards anything.
Okay. Yeah, all right. I sort of feel the same way, to be honest with you. Having said that, I remember what happens in the last episode, so I'm looking forward to watching it just to see if I remember it correctly and if I change my opinion. But I think overall, I agree with you. It's been a bit of a strange build. Yeah. Right, what do you think we get into the recap then?
Let's do it.
This episode chronicles the end of the Man in Black's wife's life and how it haunts William even to this day. Unfortunately, he has become so convinced that every aspect of his life is part of Ford's game that he killed his own daughter. Also, Maeve is kissed on the head by Ford, and Bernard leaves Elsie behind after deleting Ford from his system. Lastly, Teddy commits suicide rather than be the person Dolores has changed him to be.
Did I miss anything? Konrad, last week we started the chat all about Lee Sizemore in a way that wasn't about the main storyline. Let's mix it up. Let's talk about the actual main storyline of this episode, first of all, here. So, this episode was all about the relationship between the Man in Black and his wife and daughter, and how that's sort of, it's a bit of a tragic story, to be honest with you, and the way that sort of has affected his time in Westworld and affected his relationships post his wife dying and prior to that as well.
Yes.
First of all, let's talk about a sort of overarching here. Do you think that the relationships were portrayed well in this? Or did you like this episode?
Yeah, I did actually. This is two really good kind of character-based episodes in a row, I think, for Westworld now. Like last week with the Ake and Kohar stuff, and this week with William and Juliet and Emily.
I think so.
Emily, his daughter. Yeah. We literally talked about that before we started recording, and I've already forgotten his daughter's name. But it's not relevant anymore, as we'll find out later. So as a rule, I try not to judge people's physical appearance, even if they're actors, because, those in glass houses. But I've put my neck on the chopping block before with Ed Harris when I've said that he must be about 80 by now. And when I saw his wife, played by Celia Ward, I was like, this woman looks like she was about 10 years old when Ed Harris was William's age. But it actually turns out that she is 65, which only makes her 5 years younger than Ed Harris, and just looks great for her age. So once again, I've popped my head up above the trenches to take a shot at Ed Harris, and much like his character in Enemy at the Gates, he was there ready to blow me the fuck away with his actual age. So what do I know is my takeaway from that.
Not much, to be honest with you, and I think, to be honest with you, like, it does add years. He's committing to the I don't even know what the hairstyle is called. Like,
The ring of power.
The ring of
The ring of power for the balding gentleman.
Yeah, he's committing to it. We'll say
Yeah.
he's committing to that ring of power. Yeah, it's really interesting to me that you can't get out of your head that he's 80 years old.
He's so old. He can't. Like, he must be the same age as Anthony Hopkins, who I think probably is in his 80s now. But yeah, Ed Harris is just one of those guys who has looked like he was in his 50s for the last 40 years, and so I assume that he must be ancient by now, but he's not. But
He's
to get us back on...
spry young 70-year-old, and that's why he's able to not die. If he was 80, he would be dying by now.
We'll get back into that. But yeah, no, it's a good story this tells. I think the performances by Celia Ward, and I didn't actually look up the actress who plays his daughter's name, but she's really good, and he's great as well. And I think, given this is the first time we meet this character, and certainly the first time we really see them interacting in a I don't want to say happy family context because of how it goes, but in theory it's a happier context than the situation we've seen the man in black meet his daughter again in the present. I think they do a really good job of bringing us into that relationship and showing us the dynamics of it in a pretty short space of time.
Yeah, I do too, and obviously, the way it goes as well. Sort of at the very beginning, we have these big conversations about the idea that the mother is an addict and she needs to go back to therapy, and then it's sort of drip fed to us throughout the episode what actually happened through that. Though obviously we're not going to talk through it chronologically, so we can just say it turns out that the mother actually was right in her suspicions in terms of her husband shielding who he really was from her. And whenever she was supposedly asleep in the bed, he basically told her everything.
Yeah. Stupid
idea to do that. And that caused her to have sort of a crisis in a way. She took the little card, which we'll talk about later on, and sort of hid it away for the daughter to find eventually. And then she overdosed and died by suicide. So... did you see that was the reveal? I think we talked about it earlier in the season. Did we actually pinpoint the idea that you thought that she was going to die by suicide, or how did we sort of leave that before?
I think they did say in the first season that she killed herself, but I think it doesn't take like a relationship psychiatrist to look at the man in black and be like, well, there's probably some truth to the idea that you were quite manipulative and at least partially at fault for this relationship falling apart. And I think it's a not to say it's a bad thing, because it works in lots of situations where it's deployed, but it's very much a trope of television and movie to have one of the partners kind of have this revelatory bit of dialogue where they're like, you're right, I'm not actually the person that you think I am, and kind of crossing that Rubicon of the relationship and laying out the flaws that everyone kind of suspects in the open as the thing that prompts the other person to then kill themselves. So I think I saw this coming quite a long way away. I think most people probably did, and I can definitely buy. I think the way they kind of show this relationship and don't seem that invested in really taking a side, so to speak. Like they depict his wife Juliet as being a bit of a mess because she's an addict, but they also depict him in a really interesting way, which is as he sort of seems supportive, but he's also very distant as well. And you can look at it and be like, he seems like the good guy if you squint, but if you actually sort of break this down, it's clear that there's probably some truth to both sides of this marriage falling apart. And then when you get to the conclusion of the storyline where he comes clean and she chooses to kill herself, it's not as big of a surprise, which I don't think it was ever really intended to be. But it's a great set of scenes, I think.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, and I also think that it sort of goes some way to explain as well how hard, like how he doubles down kind of in this episode.
Yeah.
And just says it's almost like he in some way knows that he's responsible for his wife passing away in some fashion, and therefore he has to prove that the reason that he was keeping himself secret is more important, and therefore he's like making sure to double down and be like, you know what, like, yeah, she died, but I need to be this person. This is me. And he's almost shutting away the feelings that he had for his wife, especially whenever he goes as far in this episode as to kill his own daughter.
I mean, I think that's a natural extension of it. It's him not being able to deal with the consequences of his actions and the the very human emotions that you would experience when your wife kills herself, and instead he kind of builds this Man in Black character around him, which has served him okay for the last however long it's been since these events. But we see the natural conclusion of this Man in Black persona in that he, even when confronted with the reality of his last tie to a normal family life, he refuses to accept that it's real, and it goes the way it goes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it goes the way it goes. There's a great similarity between the way that his daughter dies and the way that his wife dies, because in both fashions he is responsible. Having said that, he will tell himself lies that he didn't mean to do it. So there's a moment before he kills Emily though, which I thought was really powerful, and it's the moment where he kills all of the Delos workers who come and they're saying, "Oh, it's the boss," and he's got to the point now where his brain is decaying, or his what would you call it? His
cognitive ability,
his sanity, and cognitive
sure.
ability. His sanity is decaying to the point now where he's convinced that everything that's happening to him is a result of Ford sending things to him to try and stop him on his path. So he kills the Delos workers, and there's a moment where his daughter Emily is like, "What the fuck are you doing? These are real people. These are real." He's just seen her father commit murder, and to him it means nothing. Human and host are the same now. He just needs to get to his end goal. And I thought, what did you think of that moment? I thought that before he actually killed her, I don't think you expect him to kill her up until the point he does. But in that moment, like where he's like, "Oh my god, he's actually just killed real people." What did you think of that?
Yeah, I thought that was really cool. I didn't honestly I didn't actually think about this at the time, but I'm going to mention a slight. I guess question. It's not a flaw that I have with that moment. Where aren't the guns not supposed to work on humans?
That hasn't worked for a while now. Like
I thought they just turned off the host's ability to hurt humans.
Those guns aren't host guns. Those are like the guns from the army men.
Oh, did he shoot them with the assault rifle?
Yeah,
okay, fine. Yeah, that's fine. That makes sense. I couldn't remember if it was his pistol or not that he did it with. But yeah, I mean, it is surprising. I think it works. It's a bit of a jump, I think, because we haven't really seen him. I'm trying to think if we've seen him actually harm another human prior to this point, and I don't think we have. So it's a little bit of a jump, but it's believable for him, and it's played very well. And yeah, him killing them is a bit of a shock, but it's kind of priming you for the big shock of the episode, which is him shooting Emily, which completely caught me by surprise. To be honest, I thought she was going to be a character who was around for a while, and seems like that's probably not the case based on this episode.
Yeah, she was just fodder for the character Man in Black to grow. But so where do you see him going here now? Like, your last episode, you mentioned that you had a theory that you thought he was a host.
Yeah.
Do you still believe that?
Yeah, I'm gonna double down on this. Right, you do not show Anthony Hopkins giving him his own kind of like captured cognition on one of those like data card things, unless you want the audience to start and show him somehow gaining strength through this episode by drinking. All right, okay, no. Let me start this again. His daughter gives him... They go to the aid station, and she gives him a little red flask to drink from. Now, he's either a host who isn't going to die by being shot in the chest 3 times, or there's blood in that flask and he's a vampire. Now, it's one of those two things, because by the end of this episode, he is undoubtedly stronger than he was at the start of this episode, and the only thing that happens is he drinks from that flask, and then his daughter wraps a bandage around his arm, which is the least concerning of all of his wounds, to be honest. Yeah. Like, the arm, you can get by without an arm. The bullet in the stomach is going to be a problem.
Yeah, I actually didn't even question that. That's a good point. Wrapping it around the arm.
The arm is not important, Emily. Like, we'll fix that later. Like, fucking put something around his torso. Yeah. But yeah, so I that plus like the fact that they clearly depict him as becoming stronger throughout the episode, Ford giving him his like Jim Delos style cognition in a card, makes me think that at some point he has died and he has carried on the work he did with Jim Delos by putting his own consciousness into a host, and that is the host that we have seen or that is the character that we have come to see as the Man in Black. Like, that's always been a host, because I just don't see that card. I know it's used as a plot device to reveal that his daughter was actually real, and it wasn't a creation of Ford, because how else would she possibly know the things that she knows? And the answer is because she's found the card that he hid. But I think that's a slight red herring, and I think it is setting us up for the Man in Black being a host as well, and having William having died some time ago.
Okay, interesting. Great to have a Konrad theory, big Konrad theory out and about.
Yep.
Okay. Well, at the end as well, he does like sort of start searching his own arm to decide.
Yes.
So if he is a host, do you think we'll get that answer next episode then?
I think we probably do. I think there's also a couple of great misdirects in here. So as you say, he starts searching his own arm. And we also, before he kills them, we get the dudes for the park coming up and using a scanner, and it very, very specifically says like it's checking for like the bomb in the spine, like it's checking for the vertebrae thing in the spine. It's not checking whether they're a host, which seems like it seems like maybe the spine bomb thing is not the thing to check for there. But I think the fact that it's checking for a bomb in his spine is a deliberate misdirect as well, because if he's, the boss and he's put himself into a host, obviously he's not going to put, like, in the manufacturing of the host that he's putting himself into, he's not going to put the bomb in the spine, because he needs to go back to the real world and carry on living as William.
Do we know 100% that is what they're looking for? I
think that's what it says on the screen. It says something about vertebrae on the screen, which I think is what they're looking for.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's got to be. You've got to get that next episode, surely. Otherwise, he's just going to be walking around with like a bullet in his chest, being like, I don't know, this red flask has really done the trick for me.
I mean, it does say a lot that the owner of this company, who obviously knows what these scanners are doing, he was scanned and passed, but he was still questioned whether he was a host after that. So therefore, he must have information that a host could pass that scanner. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he wouldn't be the first one, the first person to like pass as a human that's actually a host. Let's be honest. We've been down this road before in Westworld, so it wouldn't surprise me for them to do it again.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm pretty sure that's most of the William Man in Black stuff.
Well, the only thing I was going to mention is apparently, like, William created the Valley Beyond. That was the thing that we saw Ake.
Oh, that's what I wanted to mention too. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like the place that we saw Ake like turn up at somehow bypassing his own spine bomb. That was a thing that was created by William, and there's that conversation between him and Ford where they're saying like, you stay out of the Valley Beyond, and I'll not mess up your narratives or whatever it was they say, which is odd because I just don't know what. I mean, the Valley Beyond, I guess, is a physical place, as we found out in the last 2 episodes, which kind of puts to bed my theory that it was some kind of AI simulation or something like that. So I don't really know what the reveal of it is going to be like in the next episode, to be honest.
Well, I know that like it's something, isn't it something to do with the fact that they're collecting all this data to sort of build humans as hosts, their consciousness. And now, this is what I wanted to actually touch upon. What did you think about the reveal that there's scanners in the hats?
Oh, I didn't see that. There's scanners in the cowboy hats.
Yeah, didn't you? You didn't catch that. So
no, I missed that completely. That's great.
Because Emily and her dad were talking, and they were like, Emily was like, "But hang on, if you're creating consciousness, like I don't know why Emily would know all this. Like we don't even know what her background is. What's her job like? But she's like, hang on, if you're like trying to create the human brain and like, copy it and create a perfect copy of it, you need to know all the little details. It's not enough just to get all the general swaths correct." And then she says like, you would need to be scanning their brain, imaging their brain every second they're in the park. Again, I don't know why she's thinking that, but apparently that's what you have to do. And then the Man in Black just like sort of ushers his hat. She takes
I missed him doing that.
And she takes off her hat and has a look inside it and all. It's just, and I was like, cut it open, let's see the wires. But no, they don't do that. But apparently they've been imaging the brain, which is interesting to me because it's a really cool, because we remember the hat that he took off, the hat that he wears, he took that off a host originally. Yes. Now, it would be a really interesting way to be like, but they never scanned my brain. But at the same time, hang on. but we already have your brain on a chip. Like they did scan your brain. So
yeah, well, he wanted them to scan his brain. To be fair,
yeah.
so he could have just sat down with them for a private brain scanning session at some point. But yeah, I missed the hat thing. That is really funny actually, and it puts me in mind of a comment on one of our earlier videos, which I tend to only skim the comments because I don't want to get spoiled. But back when I think it might have even been the no, where does William turn up? Is it the second episode of season 1?
Second episode, yeah.
Yeah, so when William turns up, and I was kind of like joking about the big choice of picking a white hat or a black hat, and I was a bit like, that's a little on the nose. I think we had a comment saying like picking the hat is actually quite important, and I was like,
yeah.
Like, and like looking back at that now, it's like, now it makes sense.
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't think that hat comment was talking about the technology in the hat. I think that was
you don't talk down to our listeners, all right? That was what
no.
we
I'm
were
talking.
saying.
I'm talking up. I'm talking up to our listeners because I think I can't remember exactly who. Maybe it was Eric. Someone put that comment on, but I remember that comment because I remember thinking that they were talking about like the symbolism of the black white hat, and at the time, like William was a white hat cowboy, but at the time we knew and you didn't, that older William was the black hat. So I think it was more of a poetic reason why that commenter was saying that, which in my opinion builds up the commenter, not breaks them down. Because if you're just saying, but hang on, that happened in season 2, that's less poetic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely the symbolism is definitely the most important part about that. But I do like. What do you think they do if someone's like, no hat for me, thanks? Like when they come to the bar.
Bandana?
I insist, sir. Like you have to.
A range of wigs?
Yeah.
Every possible. Or you have like a little drone following you around above your head the whole time?
Yeah.
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 100%. Right, okay, so that was the main storyline. We do have one or two other things to talk about. First of all, Teddy. So the last thing we see in this episode is Teddy coming to the conclusion he sort of gained consciousness himself. He's saying that he can remember everything, but he sort of is at the point now where he sort of realizes that Dolores has changed him, and he doesn't like that. And he says, "I said I would protect you to the day I die." And then he himself shoots himself in the head because he's saying, "Well, today's that day. I'm never going to betray you or kill you, but I need to get out of this." He's just like, "See you later. I'm out."
Yeah, he can't be what she wants him to be. She's turned him into this sort of like murderous, hard-nosed killer, and it doesn't jibe with how he sees himself and his memories of himself as a person. So he chooses to die, which I think it's a good end to their relationship. I don't feel like we really got to see Teddy doing like the kind of depraved stuff that I think would be required to push him towards this, because I mean, really. He said a couple of things that are a bit like, oh, that was a bit hard, but like he hasn't really done anything that's that different. He's killed some hosts, but it's not. It didn't really work for me as a like the conclusion. I think makes sense, but I think the path to that conclusion could have been done a bit better.
Yeah. Okay, I get what you mean. I think I personally, obviously I've seen the rest of it, but I personally, like when I first saw this, I was like, I kind of am still willing Dolores to change her ways. Like, not change her mission, I suppose. I don't really know what her mission is at this stage in the show when I was first watching it. But
that's kind of where I am as well. I'm like, she's headed for the Valley Beyond, and so are so is Ake and the Ghost Nation natives, or they're kind of protecting it, I guess. But there's a conflict coming here, but I don't really see why or how it's going to be delivered, I think.
Yeah, like the previous episode with Dolores in it, I think a couple episodes ago, where she basically killed her own father.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily think that points to this particular thing with Teddy changing her path, because if she's willing to kill her own father, why would this change it? Having said that, it might give her pause. So yeah,
I think she's lost her moral anchors, I guess, is what they're doing here. Her father and Teddy were the last ties to goodness that she had. So I guess it works in terms of what a character is going to become in the next episode, I guess. But Dolores' storyline has been one that has been very up and down. So I think the impact was lessened a little bit for me because of that.
Yeah, and we do have confirmation that the only reason Teddy likes her is because he saw her naked when he first woke up. So
yeah, that's true.
So he probably deserves to die anyway. A bit of a shallow bastard.
Teddy is cancelled.
Yeah. Oh, forever. We did speculate that James Marsden probably wasn't going to be sticking around for too long.
Yeah, there we go. I was thinking at the end of this episode, I was like, okay, we lost a lot of characters in the last few episodes. I was like, the Man in Black is either a host or dead. Maeve, I was like, she seems like she's like kind of... She should probably die, although it seems like that's not going to happen. So I wonder if they're just going to clean slate at the end of this and be like, we're in a new world now. Like, we're going to future world or whatever.
Yeah, no one is there.
Yeah, not
anymore.
a single... Lee Sizemore's the only character that makes it through.
Yeah. Well, we could all hope. Right. Okay. Now, there is a mention of Maeve there you just did. So we'll talk about Maeve, because Maeve and Bernard are the two other big parts of this episode. So we'll quickly scoot on through them both. Maeve is still flayed up, sitting on a bed. Almost seems to, based on the way Ford speaks to her, it's almost implying that she's sort of given up. And then Ford gives her a rousing speech in which Ford says she was always his favorite.
This is horse shit.
Yeah.
Have they? Okay, here's a question for the eagle-eyed listeners and for you as well. Yeah. Has Ford even spoken to Maeve before this scene?
I think we've seen at least one. Not in this sort of way, just back whenever she was just a host.
I don't remember them ever sharing screen time before this. So like when he's like, "You were always my favorite," it's like, well, first off, that's complete bollocks, because it was obviously either Bernard or Dolores who were your favorites. Yeah. And also the point, it's just. It just doesn't feel. It makes him feel like a liar, and I don't feel like Maeve would be pepped up by this. So I get the point, but I don't know. It seems stupid.
Yeah, no, it definitely feels stupid. It's like a manipulative father, you know. He's like, you're my favorite. I promise.
Yeah. Maybe that's what it's like when I talk to my cats, and I'm just like, each one is my favorite. I'm like, but really, one of them is my favorite, and it's not you, Thomas.
Well, actually, I will say, I'm not like Ford. Whenever I had my second son, I found myself one time I accidentally said to my oldest son, like, where's my favorite boy or whatever, and then I was like, nope, I cannot say that anymore. So then I say, where's my favorite boys, or you're a great fella, aren't you? I
you just have to qualify it more, like, where's my favorite oldest son? Although I guess that could be misinterpreted, because you could be saying they are your favorite and also your oldest son.
Jeez, I mean, high level grammar already at 3 years old, so we have to be careful.
It's a mindset. I mean, listen, any good parent will pit their children against each other to compete for their affection. That's just how.
Well, that's what Ford does. That's for sure.
Yeah, exactly. He's got it right.
Yeah, he's got it right. So basically, Ford says you're my favorite. There is some nice dialogue here, I suppose, where he talks about, like, he didn't expect her to go back to save her daughter, and she chose not to leave. Like, his plan was always for her to leave, so she chose to get off the path. And go back to save her daughter, and then he's like, well, that's why I'm still here, because I need to save you. You're my favorite daughter. So it was a bit silly, but at the same time, I could understand what the writers were going for. And then he gives her a wee kiss on the head.
Yep.
Very slow. They probably had to do a number of takes just so they didn't get a spit line coming from the old man's mouth.
Just, like Anthony Hopkins' clammy lips just pressed against Maeve's forehead. Poor Tandy Ray Newton.
Non-existent clammy lips, let's be honest. So it probably would be okay.
That's true,
But yeah, it was a strange scene, I will say. And he just says to her, "Don't let them, don't let them kill you or whatever." So now then all of a sudden the tablet next to her starts lighting up. I'm like, Maeve, why weren't you doing this before? Why do you need Anthony Hopkins?
It's like in a Rocky movie. Like, he needs Adrian to come and give him a rousing speech 2/3 of the way through to get him in the mindset to beat Ivan Drago or whatever. Like, this is her moment to get the Rocky theme starts playing, and she's gonna get up and she's gonna stop Clementine from blowing up everyone or making them all go mad with her newfound.
What's that about?
I think. Charlotte is trying to get control of the park, and she has repurposed Maeve's superpower and stuck it into Clementine, and been like, Clementine can essentially use Maeve's superpowers to drive all hosts around her insane, and presumably they're going to try and use that, deploy her as a host weapon of mass destruction on all the rebels in the park, to fix the situation, I guess, is where they're going with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Well, I'll go with it. It's pretty weird. Like I was like, I've seen it before, but that particular plot point, I kind of was misty to me, and so in my head I was like, is this like zombie apocalypse now or something? Like raising these.
The thing that is kind of dumb about that whole plot line is like if Charlotte's plan is really just to kill all of the hosts, I mean, there's ways to do that don't involve, having to make them tear each other apart and, capture Maeve to get this superhero ability. Like, can you not just like bomb the park? Like, it feels like there's been an unnecessarily high human cost to this whole thing.
She's got to get Peter Abernathy's brain nut out of there. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. She needed that nut.
It's an important brain nut. She needs. I
can't wait to see what's.
She
in
needs that. Peter Abernathy's nut. All right.
I don't know what's in that nut, but it better be good.
Yeah. All right. Okay. There we go. Bernard. Last thing. So Bernard basically had to scramble. He got Ford out of his head because he had to scramble to try not to kill Elsie.
Yes.
Ford was doing his best to try and get Bernard, who's obviously his favorite child, to kill Elsie.
Because she's going to betray him, presumably, or so he thinks.
Yeah, but Bernard has a heart of gold. And then, can you help me here, right? Bernard was sitting in the truck, or the little dune buggy, having got rid of Ford.
Yeah.
With his tablet out.
Yeah.
And then Elsie looks over to him and says, "Were you going to kill me?" How did she know that?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's them writing from a position of knowledge. Because I suppose, like, if we're being charitable, Elsie has reason to distrust Bernard because he's obviously taken her prisoner or captured her and stuck her in a cave before. But to my knowledge, he's never indicated any kind of violent tendency towards her.
Yeah.
So there's really no reason why she would suspect that. It was just them kind of putting a bow on the section where Bernard gets rid of Ford because Ford's trying to get him to kill Elsie, and it doesn't make sense at all. It's just dumb.
Yeah, it's just dumb. So Bernard's now on his own. We'll find out what he does next episode. Was there anything you wanted to add, Konrad, to the end there? I think we've touched most things.
Yeah, not really. Like, I mean, Bernard has spent almost this entire season having people fucking with his brain, so it'll be interesting to see how he does now going forward with Ford presumably out of the picture. But yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting what you said at the beginning in terms of, feeling like this is building to something. All of these characters are now seemingly headed in the same direction. You've got Clementine is presumably going to be weaponized. Bernard, I don't really know what Bernard's going to try and do now. I guess stop the massive conflict. Dolores is on the other side of the conflict. So, and then you got the Man in Black, who I don't really know where he goes from here. Continues to be a vampire, I guess. So all of these characters are moving in a direction. I don't really know how the end of this season is going to look, though, which
I do.
I guess is interesting. I know you do.
No, you do. You do too.
There's
going to be a load of hosts in a lake.
That's true, and a tiger. But the tiger's already there, actually. So
tiger's already there. Yeah. So we sort of know where that's going to go. So it's interesting to see how that all marries together. Next week's episode's an hour and a half long, Konrad. So
nice. Another
feature length one to finish, like they did for the first season.
Lovely.
Feels less deserved this season, to be honest with you, to finish with a big feature length, but we'll go with it.
Yeah, my when you said that, if I'm being honest, my initial reaction was like, "Oh, really? Like, do you need an hour and a half to wrap up all these storylines?"
Yeah, exactly. You could watch the Scooby-Doo film 1.2 times in that amount of time. So.
Which would be better? That's the real question.
Yeah. Well, Scooby-Doo was originally written by someone who wrote really good films. I can't remember right now. So
it wasn't Jonathan Nolan and
no.
And what's her face, the lady writer.
That would be a turn up for the books. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Let us know in the comments, guys, who wrote the first Scooby-Doo film. Thanks very much. I really hope someone answers that. Thanks for watching, guys. We are obviously the Culture Cave on YouTube and the After Dark podcast on audio apps. Leave us a comment if you'd like to talk to us. Also, like the video, subscribe, all that sort of good stuff. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back next week with the season 2 finale. Goodbye.
Goodbye.